Hello, welcome to video 4 here, EMF protection within the home. So in this video, we're going to go over lots of different ways that we can start to lower our exposures to different electromagnetic frequencies within our home. And this is the best place to start. Often I hear of concerns from EMF coming from the outside into your home, and this is a legitimate concern, but by far the biggest exposures that you're going to get are from the devices that you have within your home already. So we want to focus on all of those things that we have close to us first and sort of work out from there. Because distance makes all the difference with EMF exposure. So how close you are to the source of whatever's pushing out that electromagnetic energy, the higher the exposure is going to be. So the closer you are to those things, the more exposure you're going to get. Now, it does depend on the power of that source, obviously. A cell tower is going to be different than a cell phone. However, distance is still going to be your biggest factor here. So we want to really make sure we're tidying up those things right around us and those things that we're using close to our bodies. So thinking cell phone, tablet, laptops, computers, those things that are really close to us, these are what we want to be mindful of first, then we'll work outwards. So with that in mind, let's have a look at the most important room in the house to start with here, and that is our bedroom. So our sleeping space is ultra important because we're there for a third of our life, more or less. And we're essentially in one position. So if this position is, if your bed is in an area where there's some high EMF exposure, then you're going to be feeling this all through the night at a time when you're trying to rest and rejuvenate, your body's trying to repair, and it's really compromised. That ability to repair and rejuvenate your body is really compromised if you're sleeping in a space that is too high in EMF exposure. If anyone's ever gone for camping or slept out in the bush, in the forest, and away from technology, you can attest to the fact that you get incredible night sleeps. You wake up feeling super refreshed, and a lot of this has to do with the fact that you're sleeping in an environment which has a much more natural EMF exposure level than what we get in our homes these days. And so this is what we're trying to replicate. We're trying to get our levels back to as close to nature as possible. So one of the things that we can do that's really helpful in our bedrooms is not keeping your cell phone around your bed. If you do have your cell phone in your bedroom, making sure you keep it on airplane mode is super important, because then it's not going to be bursting out pulses of radio frequency radiation all the time. But you really want to make sure that you are keeping that cell phone on airplane mode, and ideally as far away as possible. Now, to give you an idea as to why this is so important, I want to show you a 30-minute log that I took where I measured the strength of pulses of radio frequency radiation, so the EMF pulses coming off of a cell phone over a 30-minute time period. And this will give you an idea as to why it's so important to make sure that your cell phone is either on airplane mode or far away from where you are sleeping. So have a look at this. This is a 30-minute log of cell phone EMF exposure. Okay, so here is our data log for the phone, and I'll explain a little bit about what this is showing us. So every single time you see one of these red lines, these red peaks, that's representing a burst of radio frequency radiation coming off of our phone. And it tells us how strong these bursts are using the numbers on the left and right hand side. So those numbers are our microwatts per square meter measurement. So you can see it's not consistent in when it's bursting out these energetic bursts to us. And there's varying levels of strength on how strong these bursts are. So you can see down at the beginning, we've got bursts in the 2, 3, 400 range, and then we get up into the 2000 range, and our strongest burst that we got was 4,164 microwatts per square meter. A few of them that were about that strong, and many that were well into the thousands. And really, remember, we're trying to stay below 10 microwatts per square meter. So along with keeping your cell phone away from your bed and keeping it on airplane mode, it's really important as well that we want to focus on the electric fields around our bed as well. And to do that, we want to make sure that we have nothing plugged in within a 6 to 8 foot radius of where we're sleeping. So no live electrical cords plugged in to outlets around our bed. We don't want to have any cords running around our bed, certainly no extension cords, things like this. This is what we want to make sure is clear from around our bed space. And this is going to really help lower our electric field exposure and also our dirty electricity as well. So one of the ways that we can accomplish this is, because a lot of people like to have a clock near their bed, is we use a battery operated clock here, and it works awesome, really, really good. No EMFs are coming from this. It's running off of batteries, which do not give you that same alternating current type of electric field exposure. So getting a battery powered clock to go near your bed is an awesome way that you can still have that right near you, but not giving yourself all of that electric field. And often with clock radios, you get high magnetic field exposures as well. So that's a good way around that. And then just making sure that you don't have anything plugged in is a really important step. When we're focusing on our room there, we want to really make sure we're looking all around, 6 to 8 feet of our bed for any plugs, any cords, anything like that. But then also, what are the wireless devices in your bedroom? So if you have a TV or an Apple TV or anything that might be emitting a wireless signal, you want to make sure that those are unplugged from the wall at night, because even some things that are plugged in still, even though they're turned off, they're still emitting a wireless signal all the time. So certain TVs do that as well. So unplugging them is a great strategy for nighttime. Or if you have wireless devices that can be removed completely from your bedroom, this is going to be another great way to just remove that harmful frequency and keep it 20 or 30 feet away from you, from where you're sleeping. And this is going to be a great way to lower your exposure there. So bedroom should be the first place that we tackle, because it's the most important room in the house as far as health is concerned. Then we can work out from there. And then we can start to look at what are some other high use areas within the home and what are some of our exposures in those areas. We really want to be mindful of where we're spending a lot of time and what's around us in those areas where we are spending a lot of time. So again, getting back to those devices that we use quite close to us, like our cell phones, our laptops, our computers, our tablets. These are devices we're using really close to us. These are going to be some of our biggest exposures to certainly wireless radiation. Now, something we can do with these is one of the best steps that we can do for EMF protection, and that is using a wired connection. So going back 20 years and running cables and using a wired Ethernet connection is the best way to just completely remove that wireless signal altogether. And this is the best way that we can lower our exposure, using wired connections. And surprisingly, there's lots of wired connections for different things, like your phone, for example. So this is something that I use. You plug an Ethernet connection right in here. This part goes into your, in this case, an iPhone. You then turn your phone on airplane mode, so it's no longer emitting any wireless signals, and then you get internet, and you can browse use your phone just as you would if it wasn't plugged in. So that's something you can wire your phone. There's options for Android as well. You can use different ones for wiring a iPad or different phones, different tablets. This is something I use to connect to my laptop. So again, Ethernet goes in there. This plugs into my MacBook. I turn off my Bluetooth signal, I turn off my wireless signal on my computer, and then I have internet that way. So there's lots of wired options that we can use to connect our devices. Then we turn off the signal, and this is going to be a huge reduction because it's these devices often that we're using right close to us, and these are our biggest exposures because distance makes all the difference. Something else we want to be really mindful of is the location of your Wi-Fi router. So again, wired connections are best. Ideally, we would turn the wireless off completely and use wired connections. But if not there yet, being really mindful of where your Wi-Fi router is set up is important because distance, again, makes all the difference. So if your Wi-Fi router is close to where anyone is spending a large amount of time, this is a really can be a really huge exposure issue. And so you also have to think what's on the other side of the walls or the floors and ceilings with wherever your Wi-Fi router is. You want to keep it as far away from people as possible, and especially as far away from sleeping locations as possible. Now, there is some things that you can do if you're not quite there and going completely to wired. Then there's some options you can do with regards to shielding your Wi-Fi router and not letting as much of the radiation sort of emit through your house. So if it's hard to move it, for whatever reason, there are some shielding options available. So one of those is called the signal tamer. It looks like this. So this is a pouch that your Wi-Fi router goes into, and it has some silver coated fabric that's made. 10% of this is silver coated polyester, and this does a great job of limiting about somewhere around the 90% range of the radiation that's coming off of your Wi-Fi router. Now that can be an issue as far as how strong of a signal you can get, because when you're limiting the amount of radiation coming off of your Wi-Fi router, you're also limiting the ability for you to connect to that Wi-Fi router and get a strong wireless signal. So there's a bit of a balance there that comes. If you're shielding it and stopping a lot of the signal, well, then you're not going to get as strong a signal, but you're not going to get as strong of a EMF exposure as well. So a bit of a balance might have to be struck there. But this is called a signal tamer. There's other things you can do as well. There's some cages that you can put around your Wi-Fi router. It works very similar. It's just more of a, it's like a metal cage. It looks like this. So that's another option. There are lots of shielding fabrics as well. This is another one this is one of my favorites. It's called Swiss Shield. And you can use this to make lots of different things. And you can use this to drape around your Wi-Fi router. If there's some high use areas near to where your Wi-Fi router is, you can put this fabric in between the Wi-Fi router and where people are spending time. So think line of sight, that's how it works. Now, a little bit of a word of warning with any shielding, there does need to be some proper measurement before and after, because the way that wireless signals bounce around and sort of interact with one another is quite complicated. So you do want to make sure that you're measuring before and after if you're going down the route of using some shielding options. There is also the option of lowering the strength of your Wi-Fi router. If you log into the control panel, there is sometimes an option to lower the power, because often our Wi-Fi routers are way stronger than they need to be anyway. That's why you can pick up your neighbors all over the place. Sometimes I can find like 30, depending on my location where I am. So they're often way stronger than they really do need to be. So Wi-Fi router, big issue there. Some different options as far as how we can lower the exposure and be mindful of, especially the location. And one more thing you can do is also turn off your Wi-Fi router at night is another option. So you can physically unplug it, and that's great. Or you can also use a Christmas light timer where you plug your Wi-Fi router into that, and then that timer goes into the wall, and then you can set it just to go off at, say, 11 at night and come on at 6 in the morning or whatever works for your schedule. So that's another good option. Then you don't have to think about it, and you can really lower your exposure at nighttime when no one's using it anyway. Okay, so some other wireless devices that you have in your home. It's going to be really important to start to make a list of all of the different wireless devices you have, and then start to see if, one, you really need that device, where that device is, can it be moved further away from high use areas, are there wired options for those devices? These are some things we want to start to be mindful of when we're looking at radio frequency and wireless exposures within our home. There's something that I like to use as well as another shielding device. This is called a radia fence. And what this is, just a piece of plastic picture frame. You can see mine's been used quite a while here. There's a thin metal screen, little mesh that goes inside. And it's that metal mesh inside that allows it to block wireless signals pretty effectively. So I like to set this up, and then in a corner of my home, I'll have my phone behind it. And then shielding device is in between the phone and where people are spending time. And so this is a great way that you can lower some exposures around your home too. Now, some devices within our home are hard to shield. We can't really move them. They're stuck where they are. And often a lot of devices continually emit radio frequency, TVs and printers and video game systems and things like that. So I want to give you another option that you can do for some of these things that we can't move, we can't really shield very easily, and we still need to have them in our home. So something that we can do with things like I just mentioned is you can cut the power to those when you're not using them. So the simplest way to do that would just be to unplug these devices when they're not in use. When we want to use them, we plug them back in again. So this works great for TVs, it works great for video game systems, it works great for things like Apple TV, which constantly emits microwave radiation all of the time, even when it's off and the light is not on. Apple TVs are constantly emitting, so we really want to unplug those when they're not in use. And that's going to be a really great strategy to cut any wireless signals that might be coming out, also any electric fields that are coming from all the cables and cords, potentially some magnetic fields as well, dirty electricity that those devices give off and put onto our power lines, which then spreads through our whole home's power lines. All of that can be helped by just unplugging these devices when they're not in use. Now, it's sort of inconvenient, I understand, to go and unplug those devices. So there's some tools that we can use to make that a little bit easier. So some outlet switches. I'll show you two different kinds here. This is one outlet switch. So it plugs in, you plug a device into here, and it's got a little switch on here, which then you can turn the device on and off. Now, why this is so useful is it's cutting power directly from here. So the whole cord and everything with the device no longer would have power when it's switched off. So this is a great way that you can just cut the power really easily without having to unplug it. But you still have to reach down to the outlet to use this. So if that's, if the outlet's in a hard to reach area, if there's some mobility issues, or just for convenience, there's another option as well. So this is one that I use for our entertainment system in our living room. So we have our TV, our printer, our Apple TV, all plugged into a power bar, and that power bar then gets plugged into here, which gets plugged into the wall. And then I can easily kill the power to that entire power bar and all the devices connected to that with the flip of one switch here. So this is a remote controlled version of this. And what happens is you just hit the remote once and it will turn the power on, and a little red light will come on so you can tell that it's powered up, and then you can turn it off, it's de-energized, the light will go off, and then all of those devices will no longer be emitting any EMFs. Now these do use one quick burst of radio frequency. So it uses a really quick little burst of radio frequency to turn it on and off, but it doesn't continually emit. So for most people, this is just fine. If you're really sensitive to EMFs, this might not be your best option because it does give one quick burst. So these are really useful tools that we use around our house just to kill power to devices when we don't need to use them at all. Okay, and the last thing I want to talk about as far as some EMF protection within the home is some devices that we can use to help tame the dirty electricity that's on all of our power lines and that gets put onto the electric fields all around us. These additional frequencies that get put onto our power lines that we call dirty electricity, or sometimes microsurge electrical pollution, electromagnetic interference, it goes by different names, but it's these additional frequencies that can help to be tamed by some different plug-in filters that are available. So there's two main brands of dirty electricity filters. One is the Stetzerizer filter, and another is the green wave filter. So these are both really good options. We usually use them both because they handle different sets of frequencies. So the Stetzerizer filters handle lower frequency ranges in the 4 kilohertz to 150 kilohertz range. And they do a really great job of filtering and dampening those additional frequencies in that lower frequency range. The green wave filter handles frequencies from the 3 kilohertz up to 10 megahertz, so a much bigger range. And it does a good job of handling a broader spectrum of frequencies. Both of them together, often when I measure, do the best job as they kind of tackle some different aspects of it. So this is something that you can put into your bedroom or into around your home office. There's lots of uses for these within the home, and depending on what your dirty electricity situation is like, depending on what your sensitivities are like, you can use a whole bunch of these. There's a great technique that one of the instructors taught us, which is called the 5-minute kitchen test. And what you do is plug this into an outlet somewhere around the higher level of your bodies. That's why we use the kitchen. So you can plug it in where it's around your sort of torso level, and just stand, 3, 4, 5 feet away from it and just see if you can feel anything. Because some might feel strange, some of these might feel good, and most of the time you'll feel nothing. But it is worth doing a quick little 5-minute kitchen test by plugging into an outlet and just seeing how that makes you feel, because that's our bodies are always the best meters if we start to tap into their potential. Okay, so that is a whole lot of strategies that you can use to help to lower the EMF exposure within your home. Now, we can get into a lot more detail on all of these, and there's a whole lot more we can do too, but really what we want to think about is tackling all of those devices that are near us first, moving out from there, and really being mindful of our sleeping area and those areas where we spend lots of time, and remembering wired is always best. In the next video, we're going to go over some low EMF lifestyle practices. So we'll delve into some more details on how we can lower our exposure from our cell phones, and then we'll also get into what are some other things that we can do in our daily life to help protect us from EMFs, and also mitigate some of the effects of all of our EMF exposure as well.